Here's a burial that shows how these individuals died. You can see that they were stabbed to death with pencils, and they've been preserved there. No, the pencils are pointing out arrow points in their body. And so I guess they didn't want to keep the arrows, so they just left them in the body and buried them. But it's very rare, but occasionally you will find burials which they give clear indication of what killed the individual. This is a prime example of that. In some cases you even find the arrows still embedded in the bone. And there's a few cases where you see scar tissue developing around the point, so that means that they survived for a while. Later, they may have been killed later by infection, but the point's still in their body, and they just sort of left it there. Here's some other examples of grave finds that indicates the type of death. They found these clubs. It looks like a croquet club. It's not. That's a weapon. This looks like a baseball bat, but it's a weapon. And it's interesting because in the same area they found this club, they found the skull with this hole in it that matches the club. So again, you can do your own detective work, CSI type thing. And that's the murder weapon right there. This is an excavation at a site in Turkey, modern Turkey, ancient Asia, called Kurion. And it's interesting because as they're excavating this site, the first thing they uncovered near the surface are these tiles, roofing tiles. Then underneath it, you began to find the large stone columns that held up the roof and ceiling. Then under that, you have the floor of the rooms, and you see the wall. And so what you're finding here is that this is a house that just pancaked. The whole thing is just collapsed like an accordion. And that's usually indicative of an earthquake, because when the ground shakes, the houses will collapse like that. There's no indication that it's a destruction level in terms of burning. And so the whole excavation has been classified as an earthquake. So when they get down to the floor level, you can see the vessels that were there. They were probably leaning against the wall at the time of the earthquake, and as the ground began to shake, the vessels begin to roll around on the floor, and then the ceiling falls on them and smashes them. So you begin to develop sort of a sequence of events. That's one thing that's interesting about destruction levels is it preserves a moment in time. Most of the time when archaeologists are excavating, they're finding clues that may represent years and years of activity. But with destruction levels, they're finding one event that may have taken place in a matter of minutes, preserved on the floor. So for instance, they'll find human remains. This is a shop there at Kurion. That's the door. And if he had gotten outside, he probably would have been safe, but he stayed inside, curled up in the fetal position, put his hands over his head, which didn't help whenever the building fell on him. This was uncovered in one of the homes at Kurion. And I thought it would be a good chance for us to see how much information. Imagine you're the archaeologist, and I want you to extract as much information as you can from this find. So tell me about it.
It's like a mom and a baby.
Okay, so you have two individuals? Three individuals, okay. And who are they? Okay, so you've got a husband, wife, and child based upon, if you're writing it up in the report, what evidence would you give that it's a man, a woman, and a child?
Yeah, the ribs of one are huge.
Okay, so the skull is small. That would indicate a child. These two individuals are about the same size, but whenever you look at their femur, you see major difference, especially in the shin. And so this would be the male and female. Okay, so you have a man, woman, and child, so maybe husband, wife, and child. Okay, what else?
It indicates they all died at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, the fact that there's cross-cutting relationships, they're all in one area, it's probably not a burial. Plus, you know from the site that it's an earthquake. So they died in the earthquake in one instant, probably.
Might have been asleep. Didn't even know it came.
There's no indication there was a bed there. If they were asleep in a bed or something, there would have been organic material, at least carbonized remains of a bed frame or something. But this was just in the floor of the house. Who's sheltering? Okay, so if you look at the male skeleton, you can tell from the cross-cutting relationship that he was on top of the other two. And that would explain why his body has been pulverized. You see that? See the backbone and the pelvis and the skull? It just ground him to pulp whenever the ceiling fell. Okay? And so the idea is that they're on the floor and he put his body over them, hoping that he could take the brunt of the collapse, and that might save his wife and his child. Okay? Anything else? That it? What about their deaths? Did they suffer any?
Maybe the wife.
He certainly didn't suffer. Did the wife suffer?
Looked like she had a broken neck.
You can see her neck has been snapped, so that's instant death. The child suffer? Skull's crushed. So all of these individuals died instantly when it collapsed. So as you can see, there's lots of information. And this is without it doing any kind of microscopic study or any type of chemical study. Just from the relationship of the skeletons, you can learn a lot about what took place in those last seconds. Nothing else? What about right here?
They're holding.
This is his arm. That's her arm.
Aren't both hers around the baby?
She's got her arms around the baby, and his arm is here, and they're holding hands. So he probably had them wrapped up in his arms. The baby's arms, the baby's face is in the breast of its mother. So it ran to the mother, buried its face in her chest, and then they laid on the floor. He laid on top. They're holding hands when they died. Very poignant moment in time. When they were excavating this, they found a ring on the man's finger, and it was the Chi-Rho. You know what that means? He was a Christian man. That's the symbol of Christ. That may explain what's going on, right? He's not running out of the house to save his life. He's thinking about others. Just a few houses down, they also found a building, and this inscription was scratched on the wall, which identifies it as a house church. So probably members of a local house church there at Corian. So maybe we'll meet them someday. Who knows? Interesting thought.